Today we're going to talk about the resolution to the debt limit crisis and what needs to happen next, and I interview Virginia Democratic gubernatorial candidate Terry McAuliffe about his upcoming election and a failed stunt that Virginia Republicans tried to pull. I'm Brian Teller Cohen, and you're listening to No Lie. So I hope this is the very last time that we ever have to talk about the debt limit. It won't be, but it should be. So what happened this past week is that we had until October 18th to raise the debt limit before the United States ran out of money to pay all of its bills, which would then force the government into default, send the U.S. into a recession, wipe out 6 million jobs, send the unemployment rate to 9%, and eliminate $15 trillion in household wealth. Needless to say, the results would have been catastrophic for the United States. And so there was this standoff between McConnell and Schumer in the Senate, where McConnell was insisting that the Democrats do it alone through reconciliation, which is a lengthy process, but Democrats purposefully waited until there wasn't enough time to do it through reconciliation, basically to force Republicans to either buck up and help them raise the debt ceiling, just like the Democrats did 3 times while Trump was president, or let the country default. And so that presented McConnell and Republicans with 3 choices here. They could refuse to help Democrats and force them to eliminate the filibuster to get it done with only 50 votes. They could help the Democrats pass it through regular order by some Republicans voting to end debate. Or, of course, they could let the country default and usher in a global economic meltdown. Now, ultimately, knowing that the whole default global meltdown option wasn't great, McConnell presented Schumer with a short-term solution that would raise the debt ceiling until early December. Schumer took that deal, and there were a number of Republicans who did vote with Democrats to end debate and overcome that 60-vote hurdle, which meant that they could then take a regular vote on the actual debt ceiling question, which passed 50-48, with 0 Republicans voting in favor. And so there was some chest beating that McConnell blinked. But look, let's be honest here. The reason that McConnell blinked was just to take the pressure off of Manchin and Sinema to reform the filibuster. Like, think about it. If Republicans really weren't going to play ball and effectively ensure that the U.S. defaults because there were simply no other avenues to pass it other than through regular order in the Senate, then there's a pretty good chance that the filibuster rules get changed. If those were the only options, if Manchin and Sinema were faced with a full-blown recession or some changes to the filibuster, you'd have to be a special brand of insane to still defer to the filibuster. Not saying that it's impossible, but still. But because McConnell gave them an out, sure, he looks weak for a minute, but at the same time, he ensures that the filibuster remains intact. And ultimately, that's his only priority. So it's kind of a win in the sense that, McConnell backed down on this one thing and the world economy didn't melt down, but it's also not in the sense that here we are trying to pass an agenda with a self-imposed 60-vote hurdle in front of us that will remain in front of us. But with all of that said, still McConnell only agreed to a stopgap amount that would get us to December, when we're going to confront the exact same unnecessary crisis as we did this past week. Only when that moment comes, McConnell's already announced that while he was willing to play ball to do his part to so bravely help avert a global economic meltdown, real stand-up guy, next time he won't. And so Democrats either have to use reconciliation to do it alone, or they can let the U.S. default and watch the catastrophe that follows. And I truly believe that McConnell would approve of both of those because his sole priority is doing whatever humanly possible to hurt Democrats, regardless of the impact that it has on anyone else. So for Democrats, when that December vote rolls around, I would assume if the options were reconciliation or default, that the obvious answer here is reconciliation. Now, here's why Democrats ostensibly don't want to use reconciliation. If we raise the budget ceiling alone, then Republicans get to turn around and say, oh, there it is. Democrats' big spending strikes again. They own all of this debt now. Even though that is completely false because raising the budget ceiling isn't for future spending, it's for past spending. Like, for example, the $7.8 trillion added to the debt while Trump was president. But of course, that doesn't matter because Republicans are going to pretend that Democrats own all of it anyway and pretend that it's all connected to the Build Back Better package, even though it hasn't even been passed yet, so there is literally nothing to pay for. But because Democrats don't have an entire media apparatus to promote disinformation, there is a 100% chance that they'll be subjected to a barrage of Fox News, OAN, Newsmax stories on an endless loop about how the entire debt belongs to the Democrats and how we're too reckless to govern because, as we know, the number one issue for Republicans the moment a Democrat takes office is, you guessed it, the debt. Okay, counterpoint, and this is where I stand. As far as passing this through reconciliation is concerned, Who cares? Honestly, a few things here. First, just get it done and be finished with it. This is literally the Streisand effect right now. By trying so hard to make sure that this doesn't become an issue, it's currently becoming a really big issue. And second, if and when Republicans start wailing that Democrats own the debt, just remember, no one is voting based on the debt ceiling. I'm just being honest here. There are no litmus test voters out there for whom the debt limit is what drives them to the polls. If that's the best they've got, fine. It's better than default, and it's better than the chaos that surrounds an almost default. Both of those look bad too. So let's just take the path of least resistance, raise the debt ceiling, recognize that voters don't care how it gets raised, listen to Republicans clutch their pearls for 5 minutes, and move on with passing our agenda. Which, by the way, is something that people are going to vote on. And I'm pretty confident that if we're able to get lower drug prices and add vision, dental, and hearing to Medicare and add universal pre-K and strong climate action and care economy provisions and expanding Medicaid, then that's going to be a hell of a lot more newsworthy than the method by which the debt ceiling was suspended for the umpteenth time. We get so bogged down in the day-to-day minutia and winning the news cycle without considering the fact that no one's going to remember any of this stuff. But they will remember who got drug prices down. They'll remember who extended the child tax credit. They'll remember who was able to deliver hearing aids and dental coverage to seniors, who made sure that universal pre-K happened. So at the risk of being reductive, we need to work half as hard on the stuff that doesn't matter and twice as hard on the stuff that does. To listen to my interview with Virginia Democratic gubernatorial candidate Terry McAuliffe about his upcoming election and a failed stunt that Virginia Republicans tried to pull on him, you can click the thumbnail right here on the screen or check out the interviews playlist on my YouTube channel.